Maybe you can help me with this. With LGBTQ, if gender's non-binary, what do we do with the B?
The B?
Yeah, bisexual. All right, very special episode here today. I was just off air. She's going, I can see him, I can't hear him, because since this is our first meeting, and I know we've disagreed on issues in the past, and I think we agree on some issues now, I figure let's go right into it. You can follow her on Twitter at GoGreen18. Of course, you probably know her YouTube channel, Laci Green TV. Ms. Green, thank you for being here.
Hi, Steven.
How are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good.
Yeah, okay. This doesn't need to be awkward or weird. I know you've met a ton of more right-leaning people now, and I think I just heard you speaking with Mr. Raygun over there, who's a little bit in the center.
Yeah, my boyfriend. I wouldn't describe him as center, but
okay.
You know, whatever.
Funny chap. But I'm glad we finally have you on the show. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Sure.
It was one that was really requested by a lot of by the way, not to be confused for those looking at the plugs, with Glozell Green.
No.
Noted.
Oh, Lord, no.
Laci Green, noted.
I mean,
well, no. We don't want to shortchange.
It's a little obvious.
You never know if they search it. You know, noted feminist and actually has a lot of.
Won't find Laci Green in a bathtub full of Fruit Loops.
Full of Fruit Loops. Probably not.
I mean, you never know.
You never know.
Maybe, you know, there's a bright YouTube future ahead where I'm bathing in cereal.
You can just make it a Patreon bonus. If someone pays enough, they can watch you bathe in Fruit Loops.
And apply chapstick.
And there would be someone who would do that, I guarantee you.
Yeah,
Make
the absolute state of things right there.
Well, let me ask this. It was really requested by a lot of fans. You were a noted feminist. I think we did even some rebuttals a long time ago. Don't hold it against us, with some of your videos that were very popular. And then you mentioned, you know, taking the red pill. And obviously this has been documented. A lot of people are familiar with it. But for people who aren't, can you kind of set it up and explain to them, what does that mean for Laci Green? What was that journey like?
Well, that video was mostly just me saying that I was willing to talk to people who consider themselves red pillars. I would not call myself a red pillar in any way. But yeah, I have always really, you know, I come from a really conservative background. I have family members that voted for Trump, and they're very religious, and they live in the middle of nowhere. You know, I am not like insulated liberal in any sense of the word. And I started talking about some of these things on my YouTube channel and how important it is to just sort of like sit down, have a beer, have a chat with people who see things differently than you, and to really understand where other people are coming from. And I think everyone should do that. And we should all be open to changing our minds about the things that we believe and learning more and growing. So I made this video, you know, just not really thinking much of it, that I was going to
that's a mistake on the YouTube.
Yeah. Well, there were lessons learned.
Yes, especially, namely, don't read the comment section. But I appreciate the chutzpah that it took to do that anyway. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I got a lot of flack for that and continue to, but whatever. You know, I'm not.
Why, though? I don't understand why. I mean, what you just said right now, what you just expressed, seems entirely reasonable. That's something that we believe on this program. We have an open invitation to anyone, and we'll allow them a platform to speak.
I can't understand why it would be polarizing.
Right. How is that? What kind of flack do you get for that?
I think people from across the spectrum who just have really hyper-partisan opinions feel that, you know, regardless of where they're coming from on the political spectrum, feel that being willing to listen to someone else and try to hear them out and understand them is sort of like conceding how you see things, or like agreeing with them. And maybe I just communicated it poorly, or maybe people are just so polarized and tribalistic online that it just sort of created this spiraling frenzy. But it's stupid. Well, I mean, it's really idiotic, you know?
Yes, it obviously is. You say across the spectrum. So I know you mentioned, you've talked about how people on the left, feminists, sort of thought you were a turncoat, and you had death threats against you. I'd heard about your story in a parking lot because you had accidentally used the word tranny when quoting Chris Crocker, who used it himself, and they said you led to the deaths of I don't. This is. People go watch her videos. I'm not hurling mud. Laci has talked about it. If it sounds absurd, it sounds absurd to me as well. But what kind of flack would you get, across the spectrum on the right for saying, "Hey, let's have a conversation"? How are they mad about that?
A lot of people saw me as trying to just do it for views, or accusing me of trying to trick them, or, not being willing to have the conversation themselves because they felt that I had hurt them in some crazy way. You've done so much damage. There's no way, anybody on our side should talk to you. And it's just, people are just crazy across the board. Everyone just needs to chill out, just have a conversation. I think the part of it, though, was maybe I didn't see the videos you made to me, but some people made some videos that I would say were pretty inflammatory and closed-minded themselves.
Ours probably were. You needn't watch them, but that's the majority of our videos.
Okay, cool. Well, noted. I think that sort of attracts the type of person who isn't really open to having conversations or learning more. They just want to hear things that reinforce their own worldview.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And we talk a lot about, I worked at Fox News for 4.5 years before I founded this.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was not a fun experience. No, not very cool. As a matter, I think it's the opposite of cool. When at commercial break and I'm on a panel, they're selling self-lubricating pocket catheters. I can't think of anything less cool than that, Laci.
Walk-in bathtubs.
I appreciate you patronizing me. So, I will say, though, having been, I was raised in a socialist province. Quebec. There is no conservative. There's liberal and liberal separatists. So like you, I was not raised in a far right insular bubble. There was no right wing. It didn't exist. I came to the United States to learn about it. That being said, I've definitely, in my experience, having been in Quebec and been here and with speech laws in place like Canada, which much more closely mimic Europe, I've really seen the right here to be more open to a dialogue. This, as a matter of fact, you're kind of a rarity for people on the left. Many of them won't come on the show. Many of them don't have conversations at all.
Yeah. That is an interesting thing. So I don't know, I don't like making generalizations, but I feel like maybe this is something that is being exacerbated online, because most of the people that I'm friends with, in the real world, are down to have a conversation. But one thing that I've noticed happens online a lot on the left is people have this idea, kind of like what I was talking about before, right? Where if you talk to somebody who has views that you believe are abhorrent or hurtful or harmful or whatever, that is giving them power, it's giving them a platform. This is what all of the feminist YouTubers sort of disowned me over, right? They said that I was empowering the right or whatever, empowering the people that I disagree with by simply talking to them.
Right.
And not only is there that idea, but anybody, even, like myself, or anybody who doesn't really see it that way, their fans will come after them. Right. So there's this huge risk that you take, and nobody wants to, piss off their fans. So
yeah, I understand. Now I've seen a small portion of that. For example, we've talked about, I don't agree with Alex Jones on much of anything, but I've done his show several times. His son's a fan, and his son, given him merchandise, and I've been on his show and told him that I disagree with him. Some conservatives have said, well, you're enabling some of his conspiratorial views, and I'm pretty clear. I've been on MSNBC and BBC and Sky News. That being said, it was a very, very small percentage of people. It seems, in comparison to the reaction to you from feminists, where what you're saying isn't that inflammatory. That's the thing to me. That's
I don't think so, but some people do, and they still give me, still post about me every day, which is what are you doing?
Yeah.
To me, it's if there are real problems in the world and real problems in your life, why are you obsessing over what people on the random ass people on the internet do that doesn't really have much effect on the world?
Yes,
that's weird to me.
And I do think a lot of people, they're focused on that, and that's why when we do this show, we've always tried to focus on, for example, if I disagree, I don't want to straw man. We use clips and quotes and policy from Bernie and Hillary and Young Turks, and we say, here are the mainstream views that we disagree with, because anyone can find the Westboro Baptist Church and act as though there are more than 14 members with flippers, who are inbred. And the same thing on the left. But there's some mainstream views for me as a conservative on the left that I find disconcerting. I know you said you wouldn't consider yourself a red pillar. I understand that.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the main thing that's changed is your view on having a conversation, maybe freedom of speech, open dialogue a little more. Is that kind of really, when you say it was red pilled, that's the fundamental difference between pre-2017 Laci Green and post?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. But also, I sympathize and understand some of the criticisms of the feminist movement that are made online. And I agree with a lot of them. So maybe that's, if you want to call that red pilled, I think there are.
We don't need any more air quotes. I think people get the picture. If someone's already condemned you for being on the show, I understand. It's like conservatives like, not a Nazi, not a Nazi.
I heard the audio only version.
Yeah.
Probably a Nazi.
Probably a Nazi. Not a Nazi, but I think school vouchers might be good. He's a Nazi. I knew it. So then let me ask you this. You say sympathize. What would be different? What views would you say have changed in pre-2017 Laci Green and post? So you say sympathize. Let's start with that.
Just with, I have always thought this stuff, and I've talked about it online many times because I myself have been victim of really vitriolic mob attacks online many times. So, I've always, growing up on the internet and being someone who just kind of like shares their opinions online, have seen the dark underbelly of the movements that I am aligned with. And I feel like I've just seen all the dark underbellies because you're on the internet so much and that's your job, and it's pretty horrible. But yeah, I would say the main thing is just feeling like there are some aspects of the feminist movement that are just really toxic, that have been really toxic to me, that have been really toxic to people that I know. And, I have always felt that way and sort of talked about it and was kind of scared to poke the beast. But now I really don't give a because I really think that there has been a tipping point where it has become so toxic that it's actually hurting the very causes that I believe in.
Okay. What elements, I guess, would you say when you say toxic of feminism specifically?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things, but I think one of them, for instance, is like the hate mobs when somebody says or does something problematic, that is deemed not like.
There's the air quotes for those listening audio. She's doing it again. She's doing it again. People listen to audio sometimes and they go like, "Why did you?" I'm like, "No, you missed it." So okay, but I appreciate it
subconsciously. But because I hate that word problematic. Like, what is that? I don't.
That's a change because you used to use that word.
I always use that word in sort of ironic sense. And if you go back and watch my MTV videos, people didn't really pick up that I was kind of making fun of it. They thought I was serious because, I guess that's a legitimate mistake to make.
It's sort of a feminist Tony Clifton. You played them, and that's okay. I respect that.
A little bit. But I also just think people get so like hyped up about words like triggered or problematic. It's like everyone just, it's like a buzzword that people lose their minds at. But yeah, this coming back to what I was saying, just this idea that like, if you do or say something that is deemed problematic, you are now a horrible person who deserves to die and lose your job, and you caused all this terrible stuff. You're responsible for the violence against all these people just for like maybe having kind of an ignorant or different even opinion about something. And I think that's a really toxic mentality that makes it so that people can't actually have a conversation about things. No. And they can't actually hear each other or respect each other because nobody is going to be this like image of ideological purity. There's all these purity tests, right? And as soon as you've been deemed not pure enough for the left, you're just done. They'll throw you in the trash. And one thing that I like and align with some of my more moderate to right-leaning friends is this idea that we're still human beings and we should still be able to like see through our differences and work through them in a respectful way, you know? And I really value loyalty. I'm a very loyal person, and I find more of my, like politically, I find more of my moderate to right-leaning friends are, at the end of the day, even if they think I'm like a crazy nut job liberal or whatever,
right,
they aren't going to just up and leave me and, stop talking to me like many of my liberal friends have. I've never been abandoned by my right-wing friends over my views, but left-wing, absolutely.
That is interesting. I guess I never really thought of it, but having had left-wing friends like Sally Cohn on the show, and when people kind of doggy-piled on her, I try to say, listen, I disagree with her, but she's a very decent human being. That being, no, you know what? You're absolutely right. Now that I go back, all my left-wing friends from Montreal, none of them like me anymore. They all hate me. Then again, they might have just been looking for an excuse. So if we look at many do. How would we say, so some things you talked about quite a bit, since I have you here, and you talk about sort of respectfully either finding common ground or disagreement, like toxic masculinity you talked about quite a bit, and it seems as though you've transitioned a little bit, certainly in your explanation of how it's often perceived or described. Yeah. How would you describe your view then and now, if it's changed?
I don't think it's really ever changed. I have always felt that there are elements of how we raise girls and how we raise boys, those gender roles that we, uphold so highly in our culture, that there are some roles for boys and girls that are hurtful to them and can be toxic to others. Okay. And when we're talking about toxic masculinity, I think in particular, one of the big issues is telling boys to suppress their feelings and to deal with their upset and their emotions with violence. I think that men should be able to express their feelings, and when we shame them and call them pussies and being a little girl or whatever for having feelings, that is a really up thing to do to a human being. Yeah. Because men are humans too, and they're gonna have feelings sometimes,
Sure. Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with that, though. I think what I would disagree with is the presupposition that society tells young men to deal with their emotions through violence. That's where I would say, biologically, young boys tend to be more aggressive. Young boys tend to be more hands-on, more rambunctious. And a lot of them are frustrated because we put them in a public education system, which is designed for women, not young boys. And we tell them not only not to be violent, but sometimes not to be young boys, which is a bit rough and tumble. I
think I agree with you that boys, because of testosterone, and that's a generalization, but in general they do have a lot of aggressive energy, or a lot of energy in general, and that's why I think that we need to have positive outlets for boys. Like, I think sports is a great outlet for people's energy, and girls have that energy too sometimes. It really just depends, but sports and healthy competitions, ways to get that energy out in healthy ways that doesn't hurt people. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's ever this message that sometimes there is, but usually it's not like you should go out and beat someone up, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like, oh, you're having a problem with someone at school, you should show them who's boss. You should take them down and not put up with their crap, because that's how you show that you have self-respect as a man. And I think that is not a very productive thing to tell boys. My dad told my little brother this all the time, you should just, beat him up. And I'm like, maybe not though. Yeah. Maybe.
Well, I was going to say, I've never heard that.
That you have problems with.
Yeah, I've never ever heard that in my. I wonder how much with I guess sort of modern third wave feminism is this perceived societal conditioning versus what's happening in actuality. Because if you look at any public school, any public program, any intramural sports, they punish severely any outbursts of violence. And I've never heard anyone personally tell a young boy to be violent. I've heard them say, defend yourself. My dad told me that. I almost think that telling young boys they shouldn't be the way that they are with checks and balances is more toxic than trying to create outlets that maybe aren't the most conducive toward actually, like you said, sort of expending some of this aggressive testosterone-laden energy.
Well, I don't think that anybody, I think for one thing, intramural sports is different than how boys and girls are socialized. There's no doubt about it that we do tell, sure. And there's a lot of data to back this up, that we do feel more comfortable with boys expressing their emotions physically and solving problems physically. And you see this in the movies everywhere. You see this at bars and at schools. And, there's just sort of this idea that if you're a guy who has self-respect, you should stand up for yourself. And the way you stand up for yourself may include physical violence sometimes. And I think that this message can also come out in relationships, because, we have a real abuse problem in a lot of teen relationships. I don't know what the statistic is, but any amount is too much, right, of abuse. And it's not just physical abuse. Men and women abuse each other in different ways. Men are more likely to be physically violent. Women are more likely to be emotionally, psychologically abusive. Yeah. So we maybe part of that is our biological nature as males and females, but I do think the message is reinforced socially.
I guess this is where do you think it's reinforced socially for men to be physically abusive to women?
Well, no, that's not what I said.
Well, he said in relationships. So he said some of these ideas are reinforced socially, and men are more physically abusive, and women are more.
Yeah. I mean, what I mean is like this idea that it's acceptable for men to handle their problems with violence and physicality is something that we see not only in solving interpersonal problems between other men, but in their relationships as well. We don't really teach people how to deal with their emotions and how to have healthy communication so that they can deal with these aspects of being human in a healthy way.
Yeah, I respectfully, I would disagree there. I think young boys are physical in nature, and I think that's separate, right? Because this is biology versus a behavior in acting out violently toward another person. I think one is innate, and I think one is something that's not sociological.
So you think it's innate to like beat people up at school?
No, I think young men are more. I think young men are much more physical. I think young boys have much more, as you said, physical energy, and I think we sit them, for example, in a classroom for 8 hours a day, where young women tend to thrive, listening, verbally communicative, and young men get frustrated. I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching men how to. We hear it all the time now, exercising, how to physically express themselves, how to have proper outlets. I think it's a good thing, but then I also don't think that socially, I don't think we encourage men to be violent in toxic ways.
Well, I think that's, I disagree. I think that's everywhere in the media. So, and there's a lot of data to back that up. There are a lot of socialized messages about violence. So, disagree there.
That men should be violent.
Not that they should be violent, but that it is an acceptable way to handle your feelings.
Okay. Well, right now we're handling any disagreements through words and found a lot of common ground.
I mean, we can fight it out, Stephen. Let's go.
You don't want to go physically, because then the biology comes into play, which brings us kind of in. So what other aspects, I guess, of toxic masculinity? And again, I think the reason this is important, and I understand that you sympathize with it, I think you see this point of view, is that young men who've been vilified for what they are, right, for being men, and then it being referred to as toxic masculinity, then you end up with a rebound effect. Then you end up with the sexodus, second adolescence. We're seeing these results right now with young men who are afraid of relationships. What other aspects do you think that maybe we could improve with men and women as far as how we socialize them?
Well, I think that men are also, the way that we talk about relationships is often in a very entitled way. And you see this across the board with this idea that, if you're good to someone or if you're nice to someone, then they should like you and they should want to have sex with you. And I see this not just amongst men, by the way. I see this in it comes out in a lot of different ways in different communities. This entitlement to sex, entitlement to relationships, or feeling like, if nobody likes you, that is their problem, when really maybe you're aren't a likable person. Yeah. Hence
why I lost all my friends in Montreal. But they're also socialists, so I don't really care. No, I agree with you on that. I think particularly this sort of alpha male fake pickup culture, I think, is a real problem. And I wrote about, as a traditionalist, Christian conservative sort of complementarian, about waiting until I was married. And I was raked through the mud by none other than Amy Schumer, no less, talking about how that was a terrible sort of antiquated view.
For wanting to wait?
For wanting to wait, and expressing that I thought there were a lot of benefits to it, and that many people would actually probably do well to consider the same option. And a big part of that is obviously a big part of women's lib and the feminist movement, sexual liberation. So do you think that maybe it's gone too far that way? Because I think that exists quite a bit on the feminist side as well, the hypersexualization that you're kind of a failure if you don't act in a predatory way sexually like men.
Right, like this idea that if you're not getting laid, there's something wrong with you because sex is so freely available now. So what's the issue, right?
Yeah. Or that women and men handle sex differently. I read a lot of, if you read a lot of these women's magazines, it's far worse than Playboy or Penthouse Letters at this point. You read Cosmopolitan, it's acting like women are men and out there being sexual predators in the way men are hardwired. And that seems to me like something that's, like you said, it's a purity test.
Do you have an example of
sure,
that?
how to pick up guys at the bar, how to 10 different ways to please a man, and every single cover is basically acting as though women are walking sex pots who are as interested in spreading their seed in the way men are biologically hardwired to do. Doesn't mean it's right. I think men need to curb their biological urges. But it seems as though feminism runs counter to the essence of men and women.
Well, I don't think there's like I don't like essentializing men or women, you know, and like I don't think we should boil people, these huge groups of people, down to some essential nature. I think that's a little bit very reductive. But yeah, I think that there is.
It is reductive in the sense that men and I think this is. I just want to answer that. It is reductive. Men and women are different. Men are more sexually predatory. Women are not by their nature. I'm okay with that reduction. Now that being said, I don't see people as nothing but Black Lives Matter, nothing but LGBTQ. After that, you're a male, you're a female. There's a certain biological constraint there. Be what you want to be. But I'm okay with being reductive and saying men and women are different in that sense.
Well, men and women are different partially because of our biology, you know, males and females, and partially because of how we're socialized.
Of course.
So yeah, I think there are differences between men and women. Absolutely. I just think the differences are sometimes overstated. They're more hyped up. We are very hyper focused on how we're different, when actually there are a lot of things about us that are the same. For instance, women like to get laid too. Women love having sex. So, you know, most women. I can't speak for all women because that would be too reductive. Yeah. But
most women like to get laid in the constraints. Not all women. In the constraints of an emotional connection, a relationship, whereas a guy can have sex with 5 people in a row. Many guys, not all guys. That's why you see the pickup culture on the male side and not in the female side. They don't have the same emotional hardwiring sexually that women do, as a general rule.
I don't know how I feel about that statement. I think that's reductive. But in general, I think it's true that by some combination of biology and how we're socialized, that ends up being how the majority of people who are men and women experience it. But, you know, I don't think that there's any sort of like innate sort of like part of being male that makes you this creepy, douchey pickup artist type. You know, like that's a combination of maybe some sort of sexual drive plus being an asshole.
Yes.
You know, and men are not assholes. So this idea that, well, all men are just sort of these creepy, predatory guys just waiting to come out, I strongly disagree with that.
I didn't say that, though, but I do say that men can be married in the long term and go, there goes another one. Men are hardwired to spread their seed, and they want to be as promiscuous as possible if left to their own devices without a moral constraint. Women aren't designed the same way. Women biologically don't necessarily. That's why the stereotype is the cad, to use the old terms, and then the nag, the cad and the nag. The woman refuses sex or uses it as a manipulation tool, like you said, manipulation, more emotional abuse, whereas the men are more physical. That applies sexually as well. And I think that's important to recognize, because if we're going to teach and fix some of these problems and find what makes us the same, teaching young men how to be upstanding men, husbands, fathers, is the most important thing of all. And same thing with women.
Yeah, well, like I said, I disagree with your diagnosis of all men and all women as these super reductive categories. But yes, I do think that we should teach men and women how to function successfully and healthfully in their relationships so they can have fulfilling lives. Yeah.
Well, I think an example is Amy Schumer, to go back. The reason that's shocking is because it's rare. Right? The reason that
like the idea of a woman wanting to sleep around?
Yes.
Or what? Yeah. I think it's probably more rare for a number of different reasons, maybe partially biological, partially it's been socially unacceptable for women to be sexual, although that's changing, and maybe that's why you're seeing more of this stuff that you describe as male behavior. But
I didn't describe it as male behavior, though. I separated behavior versus biological urges. I think there's a really strong, there needs to be an importance on curbing biological urges. We are not just determined by our urges or by our desires or by our carnal
the ones that are harmful to others.
Yes, exactly.
The stuff that's harmful to others.
Right.
Or to ourselves. Yeah, those should probably be curbed. And we can and do curb them, but that's what I'm saying with like the toxicity stuff is sort of the ways that we make excuses for people to not curb those impulses or to not curb those learned behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think where we're kind of disagreeing and missing each other here is I think a lot of young men have been told to curb it in a way that's unnatural and unhealthy. Like you would say, hiding emotions. That's a very new thing. I've talked about this. If you go back to Lincoln, Roosevelt, this idea that you are a jock or you are an artist or you are an intellectual, that's a very new idea. You were the term I've talked about this was actually jack of all trades, master of one. And the mocking of it became the colloquialism, master of none. The truth is, you weren't considered a well-rounded man unless you were all of these things. And it was perfectly fine to cry, to hug another man, to kiss another man. So I think that's where people definitely have gone astray. But I also think that, in addition to that, I think feminism has really put a lot of burdens on young men, and that's why you see a rejection of it, to really stop being young men. We have an education system that's based for young women. If you look at the way right now, Hollywood is reacting to things that we would agree, the Me Too movement. The reaction is one that assumes that of guilt, right? And so a lot of young men feel browbeaten for being men, is my point. And the biology is an important component that needs to be acknowledged. And rather than say, hey, you shouldn't be so rambunctious, let's sit you in a classroom, we should say, all right, young men are rambunctious. How do we channel that positively?
Well, I think that young men need to learn how to function in the world and to be disciplined, and you need to learn to have respect for yourself and the environment around you. And I think that's the thing men should learn as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And same thing with women. And like you said, across the board, there can be toxic masculinity, femininity. It goes both ways. So let me ask you how this ties into, because I know you've also taken flack, like you said, from the transgender community, I think needlessly, for delineating between biology and gender. Have your views on that changed at all since the quotes, again, for people who are listening audio, red pilling? Are they fundamentally the same?
I guess I should ask you what you would say the same is. Like, what's your...
Well, I know that you've talked about how sex is biological and that gender is a social construct.
Yes.
Is how you presented it a long time ago. But I also know that you, I think rightfully, talked about how there's a lot of pseudoscience on LGBTQAIP blogs that talk about a male brain and a female brain and transgenderism. This is one thing that maybe you can help me with this. With LGBTQ, I think that's LGBTQ, some people add AIP. If gender's non-binary, what do we do with the B?
The B?
Yeah, bisexual.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well,
you mean like if
bisexual means there's two.
What is? Oh, right.
That's problematic to use that word.
Right. Okay, I think I see what you're saying. Bisexual, well, at least in the research, refers to sex, right? So male and female. Whereas gender would be a different, like the non-binary designation refers more to how people interpret their sex in the world.
Okay.
Not necessarily about genitals. More about how the masculine or feminine or androgynous energies.
But then the acronym makes no sense because you have one that's biology, bisexual, and then transgender, which is gender, societal. They've got to change the whole acronym.
Well, some people have made the criticism that sexuality or sexual orientation and gender identity are two very different issues, and so they shouldn't be on the same acronym. I disagree with that because I think they all kind of fall under, they all have a lot of shared traits and shared struggles that all fall under anybody who doesn't have a normative, just a conventional, what we consider a mainstream sexuality or gender identity, so those things have shared characteristics.
Okay, so
but yeah, they're different. They are different.
Yeah, well, bisexual would be sexual, so it's basically someone who's attracted to a male or female biologically versus gender. So a bisexual could be attracted to a male biologically who identifies as, your guess is as good as mine at this point.
Any gender they identify, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think that people on the right have had, and since you talk so much on sexuality and gender, how many genders are there? How many pronouns are there? What do we do? So since it's a societal issue, what do we do societally to deal with this? How many can be put in a driver's license? What do we do with voter registration? It's an ever-changing rule book.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
I think
only
that
two?
Yes.
Only two camp? Yeah.
I do.
Well, I think there are practicalities to that view. However, I also think that there, a lot of people just experience themselves and the world differently, and they want language to describe their experience and their identity. And, I think that's a positive thing. It doesn't hurt me, it doesn't hurt anyone else. I think the question of like driver's licenses and stuff, or what kinds of laws should govern, sex specific spaces, things like that. Yeah, there's complicated issues that we'll have to mesh out and figure out how to make it work. But just in terms of how people, what pronouns they want to use or how they want to describe themselves, I don't give a shit. Live your life.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone here does either. But that's why someone like Jordan Peterson is so popular, because we're well past that, and now we're at the point of compelled language. In Canada with the bill there, and we have it in New York where landlords can't use the wrong pronouns for fear of being sued. So we are past it. It is a legal issue now. It is a political issue now.
But,
it is a rights
when
issue.
When has anyone ever like? I see what you're saying. Well, C-16, I think Jordan Peterson just really, really misrepresented that bill. I read the bill. I read all of the legal language. I did not see what he was saying in any of the language of that bill. And, I understand the sort of, what's the name, like a snowball effect, right?
Yes.
I'm like so waking up this morning.
No, that's
where, where someone, oh, well, now we've opened the door to this and what next? And people said that about same-sex marriage too. Like, oh, you can marry a man, no, you're going to marry your dog or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think that's I think it's a valid argument. Just saying it is not an. What do we do now with what about the males dominating young girls' sports now in high school? Transgenders, whether it's wrestling or track. What about people who've been jailed in Canada for engaging in what they consider hate speech? We've had them on the show from people who run bed and breakfasts.
People who went to jail for.
In Canada for hate speech.
What was defined? What was the hate speech?
That's the problem. So that's the problem. Either hate speech exists or it doesn't. One of them, Mike Ward, was actually put before a human rights tribunal and fined, and now that's being on appeal. So he's the one who's been on the show most recently. He made a joke about a kid with a disability who was on Make-A-Wish and was on effectively the Canadian version of American Idol. And he made a joke that was deemed offensive and was put before a human rights tribunal and accused of hate speech. Stephen Boisson was a pastor who spoke out and said, "I'll never marry two men. This is the religious view of marriage." That man was fined and I believe served jail. It happens all the time.
Just for saying that?
Yes.
Okay, well, if that is indeed what happened,
and that's what the bill emboldens.
I would want to fact check myself, but if that is indeed what happened, that is messed up, and I don't agree that. I support freedom of speech. People should be able to say whatever they want, including hate speech,
right.
Which is, I am anti-hate speech, but I think that there's a tricky problem with trying to restrict people's speech in any way, and the subjective lines around what is considered hateful. The only line that I draw really is when you're inciting violence.
Sure.
I don't think that is protected speech. So,
no, it's not. We agree.
Philosophically. But yeah, I mean, if this became a huge problem in the United States, I might have more sympathy for that argument. But, as it stands right now, nobody's being sued for using the wrong pronouns or whatever. And who?
Landlords in New York to start with.
Can you give me some names? Because, I haven't heard of that, and I'm pretty...
Well, I just gave you two, and if I keep giving you names and facts, and you say I don't believe you, you're doing the Naomi Wolf, and then you have to fact check you afterwards. So this is in New York. Yeah, landlords in New York. We've written about it on the site extensively. You have plenty of professors who've gotten in trouble, obviously, for improper language. I can't give you every single name, but I've just given you a handful. So
I'm just asking for one landlord, Stephen. You're saying landlords
what's the law?
Are being
It's the law.
sued.
Yeah, it's the law.
So the law in New York, as far as I know, okay, is that you
About
have
misgendering.
to have bathrooms for, bathrooms for a lot of genders, right? Like 20 or 30 or something, at your place of business.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about landlords and misgendering. So there are laws now about misgendering, and the reason we come back to the point is why it's important. I think maybe the fundamental issue here, maybe you and I can find where we agree, is where does sex, in your opinion, end and gender begin, and how do we recognize that? Because it's one thing to say, I don't care what someone says, they want to put on a dress and go in and call themselves Nancy, fine. I think both of us agree, couldn't care less. But where does sex stop and gender begin, and how do we define that legally as to protect the rights of everybody else who may not agree with this and may express it through speech.
Well, I don't think there should be, punishments for misgendering unless it's being used in a way that is deliberately meant to harass or abuse someone. An accidental misgendering someone, or even if you just can't get it right, I don't think that is a compelling case for criminal activity. But in general, if it's part of a pattern of harassment and abuse toward someone, then that's a different context and a different story, And I think that in general, people should just try to respect each other and just don't be an just try to be kind to other people. And even if you don't understand why they have pronouns that are different or why they feel this way, just try to understand and be nice to other people, and if it gets nasty, let's come back to our shared where we see things from eye to eye as human beings.
I agree with being nice. Absolutely. I think it's important if we're going to restructure society, how we view sex and genders, as you put it, differentiating between the two. I think it's important that we don't completely restructure it and then say, by the way, if you weren't along for the ride, you're an asshole. If we're going to start fining businesses, if we're going to start punishing people for speech, I think the onus is on people to say gender is separate from biology, and this is why you have to go along with it. Otherwise, we put you in jail or fine you. And I haven't heard a compelling argument for that. I think that's bullish.
Yeah, well, I don't think we should put people in jail or fine them for those sorts of things either. But it depends on what laws, it's hard to make general statements, but one of the debates that I find really interesting is about, sex and sports. Like you mentioned before, where trans women are playing alongside cis women, people who were born biologically male before transitioning, and, the way that affects your physicality. We know this is just, basic biological facts that males are on average larger and males are on average have more muscle, whereas females have more fat and, have different reproductive capacities. So, those are the situations where I'm like, this is really rough, because I don't think that we should tell people who are what to be. But I also think that there are some biological realities with sex, and those pose some difficult questions. And I think people need to be honest with themselves and with others about what's fair and what's not. Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to get into a situation that disadvantages females who are smaller, who have different athletic skills and different abilities, because our bodies are a little bit different.
I agree with you. I think a challenge comes in there that a lot of people consider, as you've experienced now, consider that hate speech. Consider what you just said, bullish, and everyone is rushing with a legislative baton. So that's where it's important to determine where you are. If you draw the line at sports, some other people draw the lines at words. Like the New York law, like we're talking about, or in Canada, which is so far gone. Free speech doesn't exist in any other country outside of the United States. So, and that's eroding here. So everyone has a line, and I guess my question is, how as society do we define that line? It seems like to you it's things that are physical, sports, but for
because the real tangible physical reality is sex. Yeah. You have a penis, I have a vagina. Your body is different than my body, right? So that's just a physical reality. Now, those realities can be shifted a little bit with various medical interventions, and I think that's what makes it difficult, because somebody who is competing, a trans woman who is competing alongside cis women, it's hard to say to what extent a trans woman's body is just like a cis woman's body with medical interventions, and to what extent we see these differences just naturally amongst cisgender women anyway, right? Women are different sizes as well. So where do you draw the line of
Yeah, it's not even close.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm just saying that these are nuanced and difficult issues. If you want to be really logically consistent about it, right? And you want to say well, this is the cutoff for size. Well, what about when you have a female, a woman who is born really big? And, you see a lot of athletes who are just like kind of anatomical anomalies.
Yeah.
Basketball players and stuff, like they're huge. They're not the average
This
size,
is where,
not your average dude.
Yeah. I think this is where generalizations are important and necessary. And I think, like you said, it's nuanced, but I don't hear a lot of solutions. This is coming from not yourself, anyone in the world.
I don't have solutions. I can't solve these problems. These are very difficult issues.
I don't think so.
Have like some agenda that I'm railing on.
No, I know you're not. I'm saying I do think there's only one solution. Just like when I've talked about abortion with other people, there's only one consistent line, like you said, to draw logically, and that sex is biological, and that's how we draw the line sociologically. The idea that gender and sex are very different is a very new idea, right? I mean, it starts with, you go back to Simone de Beauvoir in the 40s, and then you have John Money, and then really this idea that it was non-binary only started in the 80s and 90s with Judith Butler. Even people talking about transitioning. I know you've talked about this.
Sure.
Still, it was identifying with male or female. So it's a very new idea, and we're restructuring everything on something that's just not, it's not defined in science, it's modern gender theory. So it's reductive. The solution is reductive. You're right, it's reductive.
I hear you. No, I hear you. I think that's a legitimate critique. I just, the problem that I come up against, I think I agree with you in maybe more ways than you realize. Just that my concern is it's also important to me to make sure that the world is equally accessible to everybody.
Sure.
Regardless of who they are or whether they experience dysphoria or not. Like, it's important that everybody feel like they have the same opportunities to be able to pursue, and the door is open to anyone, and it shouldn't be closed just because you're trans, So with the sports stuff, what do you do? How do you solve that problem in a way that doesn't close the door to people who have a right to play sports and have a right to compete and be athletes and live their best lives? That's where I get kind of tripped up, is how to accommodate everybody at once.
You can't. And actually, I would disagree with your statement. I would agree with everything except for one thing. You said it's important that everyone has the same accessibility, and I agree. But then you said something which struck me. They feel as though they have equal opportunities. I disagree. They just need to be ensured equal opportunities. And that solution is reductive.
That's what
I don't care how they feel. And where we're talking about the gender issue in sports, doesn't matter how you feel. You do have the same opportunity. That's a great example. You have the opportunity to compete as a man, which is how you were born. You have the same opportunity as every other person who was born a man. But I feel like a woman. Well, doesn't matter. You compete as a man. Equal opportunity there. It's reductive. It is simplistic, but it wasn't. We've created a problem now, and now people are trying to figure out how to solve it. There isn't a problem if you go by biology.
Well, yeah, I hear you. I do get that that's just like the simple point blank solution, but I'm not satisfied with this idea that people who are women should have to compete alongside men just because they were born male. I think when you understand, and I don't know how much exposure you have to real life trans people, right?
A lot. Yeah.
Okay, so cool. So you probably are familiar with how just doing simple can be. And I think if there is a way to make people's lives easier and to help them live the lives that they want to live, then we should do it. But I hear you in the sense that when it comes to like athletics or physical stuff, really, athletics is about your body and about your sex. So, but some people, they transition, and their hormonal makeup does change. Particularly actually from female to male, because it is easier to add testosterone than to take it away.
Yeah.
From a body. So
that's a good point. Or certainly, I would say I hate to, but we actually have Brian Shaw on the show, is World's Strongest Man. So to certainly we talk about hormones a lot on the show. It's a lot easier to certainly change the effects than to eliminate the effects of an already testosterone-laden body. You can't undo the bone density. I mean, you can do cancer by injecting estrogen into a man, but you can't undo him becoming a man. And that's why right now, we've hit the point with puberty blockers and children. And that's another question which I'm against. But I would agree with your statement there.
Yeah. So it's tricky. I mean, I don't know. My mind is open to solutions that make everybody happy, but I don't feel like I've heard those solutions. And
they don't exist.
Maybe you're right. Maybe we need to have more emphasis on sex, or maybe, something that someone had told me that I thought was an interesting idea is going based on your weight class or on your body composition, so that people are being matched based on people that are the same size as them.
It doesn't matter. We already have that with wrestling, and that guy just beat the shit out of a bunch of women in Texas high school wrestling meet. So you have weight classes, but a male weight champ, there's never ever been in any physical combat a male champion versus a female champion in the same weight. It's not close, and it's not fair to women. That's my point. It's not fair to women.
Well, that's where I agree with you. Is I don't want biological female people, whether they are women or men, to be over.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your candor. I think I don't think there are solutions that please everybody. And I think the only consistent line is gender and sex, are up until recently have long been considered the same thing, and these are complications now or nuances that are created in a way that can hurt people. That's the issue, very physically, as we're talking about, but this kind of victim culture creates unintended real-life victims. This happens all the time, and there's no solution to please everybody. So I think we both err on the side on many issues of freedom, of speech and of expression, and not infringing on other people's rights. I think you're in the right place on most of it. I just disagree with you on some of the issues. So your YouTube channel, we do have to get going. I know you're busy, and I am as well, is Laci Green TV. That's Laci C-I, again, for people listening, and then Go Green 18 for as long as Twitter allows you to be on there. Who knows?
Yeah, I haven't really been using social media much, but yeah, that is where I'm at. And I have a book coming out in September that goes into much more detail about these matters.
I would love to read it, and I'd love to have you back on to talk about it. And you also have a Patreon, by the way.
That'd be interesting. I do, yes.
Where is that for people to go? We'll bring it up in the lower third here.
It's just Laci Green, I think.
Okay,
yeah,
there you go.
Thanks for the plug.
Absolutely, Laci Green. And she might have a bonus pretty soon where she'll be in a tub eating Cheerios. Yeah, hey, listen, that get your money's worth.
Don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to it.
I won't hold you to it, but I will picture it. Laci Green, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I do hope to have you back, and I hope your book's a success. Thank you for taking the time. If you like this video, subscribe, watch one of these other videos, or hit the notification bell. Well, you should hit that if you subscribe anyways, because subscriptions don't mean anything on YouTube anymore. Now you have to hit notifications so that it shows up in your inbox. So I don't know why you subscribe in the first place, but that's what you have to do. Also, we're not making money off these videos anymore because YouTube decided why. They just said we're not going to. And when we said why, they didn't tell us why exactly. Imagine if you showed up to your job, you did all your work, and then they said, hey, by the way, we're not going to pay you. You said why? They said, piss off!